Hello YouTubers, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'll be showing you how to create a realistic Molotov cocktail in Godot. So this complete project is available on my GitHub and the link is in the description. And before we get started, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so that you never miss out my realistic game development tutorials. So let's get started. Alright, so this is our empty project and then let's start collecting the assets. So for the assets, let's jump back to our first link, and this is the shader which we will be using for the liquid inside our bottle. And then next we have this free flipbooks which is provided by Unity. Alright, so there are lots of flipbooks to use, so no need to collect the assets from different sites. So I have created a GitHub repo where you get all the complete project. Alright, so once you go through my GitHub repo, make sure you download it. So after downloading the project, open it up and again open the folder and you'll find a zip file. So just open it up and then extract it. Alright, so this is the file and open this and you will see we have few folders over here. So we have assets, so we'll copy the asset folder, jump back to our project file and then let's paste it here. So we need one more file. For that, let's go to scene and here you'll see we have a liquid mesh.gd. So let's copy this, jump back to our project and then let's paste it here. Alright, now jump back to Godot and then let's create a 3D scene and rename it to be bottle, and then let's add a mesh instance. And if you go to assets in the bottle, you'll see we have a obj file over here. So just drag and drop in the mesh column and you can see our mesh is very large, so let's scale it down to be 0.05 and let's assign material for our mesh. Alright, so go to geometry and then click on new standard material 3D, and then in the albedo just drag and drop the texture, and then in the transparency change the transparency to be depth pre-pass and then change the cull mode to be disabled. Alright, so this model and the texture is created by me, so you can use it in your game. So next let's add a script for our bottle. So make sure you select the mesh instance and then click on the script icon, and then let's load the script. So the script is liquid mesh.gd which we copied from my GitHub repo, and then click on open, then click on load. Alright, so again if you select your bottle, then you'll see we have few options over here. These options were not present previously and it appeared now. Alright, so let's create a new shader material, and then in the shader let's load the shader. So let's go to assets in the liquid, in the shader, click on liquid.gd shader and then click on open. Alright, so again we have few parameters over here such as visuals, bubbles and resources. So before actually tweaking over here, we need to save this resource file. So let's save it up and let's go to assets and in the shader name your resources. So in my case I'll be naming it to be bottle liquid and then click on save. So once you save your resource, so this was the resource which you saved. So let's scroll down and in the geometry in the material override at the next pass section, let's just drag and drop the resource. Alright, so now currently you can see we have a liquid inside our bottle and it's time to change the color. Alright, so in the visuals let's change the liquid color to be black. Okay, and you'll see few other options such as foam line, and if you increase or decrease you can see how it affects. So currently the foam line is not being affected much, but if you change the fill amount you can see how our liquid is behaving. Alright, you can even change the glass thickness and many other values such as scale wave intensity. And for wave noise, let's add our wave textures. So just go to liquid and here let's drag and drop our wave texture, and let's do the same thing for bubble. Okay, so let's save our scene. So let's create a new folder, call it as scene, and then let's save it. So now if you move your mesh, currently you can see the liquid is not actually moving. So to make the liquid move, just save your scene and close it, and then let's again open it up. And now if you move, you can see our liquid is moving. Alright, so I think this is a glitch because we add script and this has the tool keyword at the first, so sometimes the tool doesn't load, so you have to again exit and reload your scene. Alright, now you can see we have our liquid moving. You can change with the other values such as foam, line, fill amount and many more according to your wish. Next, let's add a node 3D and then rename it to fire. So let's start adding flames for our fire. So let's add a new GPU particles 3D node, and then let's change few values over here. So all these values are trial and experimented by me, so you can do yours, but this is what I feel the values will be good for the fire. Okay, so in the process material, let's add a new particle process material, and then in the drawer pass, let's assign a new plane mesh, and let's change its orientation to be facing Z direction. Okay, next in the geometry, let's change the material override to be a new shader material, and then let's assign a new shader. So let's load it up from our assets from the shader and the particle flipbook animation, and then click on open. So let's assign our flame image over here. So go to assets, in the fireplace explosion we will be assigning the flame 3 halo. So just drag and drop in the albedo texture and you can see everything is vanished. So the reason is because you can see currently this is the flipbook and I have 16 horizontal frames and 5 vertical frames. Okay, so I need to set the values over here. So particle animation H frames are 16 and then particle animation V frames are 5, and you can see the flames are visible now. And change the albedo color so that the color is same as our flame. Okay, make sure you select the particle animation looping to be on, and then let's play with the process material. Okay, so in the emission shape, change the shape from point to be box, and then assign the x values to be 0.3, the y value to be 0, and the z value to again be 0.3. And then in the direction, change the x value to be 5 and z value to be 5. The spread, let it be 180, flatness to be 1, so that all the particles emit at same height. Okay, in the gravity, let's change the gravity to be -20 so that our particles have a great gravity value, and the initial value, let it be 1 and maximum to be 10 so that our particle starts throwing in our scene. Okay, next in the damping, change the minimum value to be 0.3, maximum to be 0.3 so that there is a few resistance for particles. In natural this doesn't happen, but I just added it. And for the angle, the minimum angle to be -10, maximum angle to be +10, so that you know a fire always doesn't be at the same angle, they will be always having variations. So that's why we change the minimum and max angle. Alright, so in the scale, if you change anything, this doesn't affect for particles, so it's no use. Okay, so next in the animation, the minimum animation to be 12, the maximum to be 16, and then you can see our particles started animating. So next in the color, so this is the main part. In the color ramp, let's add a new gradient, and then in the gradient, let's make the end to be completely transparent. Okay, so the reason we make the ends to be completely transparent is because initially when the fire particle loads up, we want a fade in effect, and when the fire completely exits, we want a fade out effect. So that's why we make it completely transparent, both the edges. And then in the center, let's change the alpha value to 1 and increase this to be complete white. Let's drag it over here. Let's do the same thing in the left side. You can see the flame doesn't vanish directly, it has a fade out effect. Okay, so in between, I guess let's add a bluish kind of effect, and let the alpha be somewhere over here. So initially when the fire loads up, it will be transparent, then it goes to blue, and then it completely turns to orange, and at last the fire again will be white, which means it will be complete orange, and then slowly it will have a fade out effect. So this is a great technique to make your fire fade in and fade out. Alright, let's change the alpha value a bit to here. Okay, next in the time section, change the lifetime to be 15 seconds and change the explosiveness to be 1 so that all the particles emit at the same time, and then fixed FPS to be 60, and then the final thing is amount, so let the amount be 150. Okay, now you can see our particles have started emitting together, and it falls because we have a gravity value. If you change the gravity, okay, so you can see our fire starts moving. So we will add gravity to be -20. Okay, so let's make it one shot, and then let's change the emission to be off for now. Let's rename it to be fire. Okay, so next let's add the blast effect. So for that, let's again add a GPU particles 3D and then rename it to blast. And then in the process material, let's assign a new particle process material, and then emission shape, this time let it be sphere of radius 2. So all these values are experimented by me, and you can tweak the values for your liking, but I guess this is good for most of the games. Next, in the direction, change the x, y and z value to be 5, change the spread to be 180 and flatness to be 1. So the reason we change the flatness to be 1 is because we don't want our particles to have a different value of y, so all the particles emit at the same position, so that's why we change the flatness to y. We did the same thing for our fire also. Okay, in the gravity, let's change the y value to 0. So the reason we change the y value to 0 is because gravity will not affect our blast value. So imagine you throw a bottle at the edge and blast effect will be going on for 1 to 2 seconds, so that effect doesn't have gravity. But in case of flames, when we throw the bottle and if there is any slope, we want our flames to properly align on the slope, so that's why we assign gravity on fire and not here. Okay, in the damping, you can change the value to be 0.3 to 0.5 or 0.2 to 0.5, and angle to be -10 to +10. And for color, let's create a new color ramp, and let's do the same thing what we did for fire. So the edges will be transparent and the center portion will be white. And next, in the animation, the minimum animation to be 0.5, the maximum to be 0.5. Okay, next in the dryer pass, let's assign a new plane mesh, and again the orient to face Z. And then in the geometry, let's assign a new shader material, and for the shader, let's again load the same particles flipbook smoothing shader. Click on open. In the shader parameters, this time we will be using this texture. Drag and drop in the texture albedo, and this texture has horizontal frames as 5, the vertical frames are 3, and the albedo to be complete white. Okay, so you can see affecting in our scene, and the particle x and y value to be 3. And finally, let's change few values over here, the amount to be only 2 and the explosiveness to be 1 with our fixed FPS 60. Okay, so you can see the effectiveness, and if you see here warning, no issues, you just click on this scene and the warning will be gone. Okay, so let's save it. Let's turn on the one shot and emission to be off. Okay, so once our blast effect take place, we want few particles to be emitted from the blast. So for that, let's again add a GPU particles as a child of blast, and here again the same process. In the process material, add a new particle material, and the emission shape to be point, direction to be 5, y to be 100, z to be 5, let's leave the other value. Gravity, it's fine. Initial velocity to be 5, maximum to be 7, and the angle 0 to minimum to be 0, maximum to be 720. And color, let's assign a new color ramp. In the same process, the edges will be transparent and the center portion will be white. Right, next in the drawer pass, let's assign a new plane mesh. Change the orientation to be facing Z, and in the geometry, let's create a new shader. Again, assign the same shader. Okay, shader parameters, change the albedo color to be white, and the texture this time will be this cloud 8x8, and the horizontal frames to be 8, vertical frames to be 8, and you can see it on the screen. Okay, so particle scaling to be 1 and 1, and then make sure you click on this particles animation loop, and make sure you do the same thing for our blast. So if I forget, then make sure you enable it. So next in the time, change the explosiveness to be 1, and then speed scale to be 2.5 so that the animation is faster, and again fixed FPS as 60. Okay, and then amount from 8 to be 50. So let's save the scene. Okay, so next for the sparks, let's add a GPU particles, but before that, make sure the blast particles have one shot on, and then let's add a GPU particles. In the process material, let's assign a new particle process material. In the direction, change the X value to be 5, Y value to be 100, Z value to be 5, spread to be 70. Change the gravity to be 0, initial velocity to be from 7 to 10, and damping to be 0.2 to 0.5, and in the angle, change the max value to be 720, and color, let's assign new gradient. And again the same process, the edges will be completely faded out, which means we'll be having the alpha value to be complete 0, and the center portion is white. Okay, next in the drawer passes, let's assign a new plane mesh, the orientation to be facing Z, and in the geometry, this time we will be using a shader material. Okay, in the albedo, let's change the color to be somewhat orange. Okay, this is good. And in the transparency, change the color mode to be disabled. In the shading, change the shading mode to be unshaded. Next in the build mode, change the mode to be particle billboard. And currently you can see the size is huge of our sparks, so let's change the size in the drawer pass to be 0.1 to 0.1. Okay, so this is good. And then let's change the explosiveness to be 1 and speed scale to be 3. Okay, the amount to be 50, and one shot to be on, emitting to be off. Let's save our scene. And last two parameters are lifetime to be 0.5 and fixed FPS to be 60. Okay, so this is the scene tray for our Molotov, you can see here. And for the Molotov to have a damage effect, we will be creating later on. So let's add script to our main node. And I noticed here I just added a new node 3D rather than a rigid body, so I should change it to be a rigid body 3D. Okay, and this requires a collision shape, so let's add a collision shape node. And then in the shape, let's assign a box shape, and then let's give the shape. Okay, you may think that why don't we directly select the mesh and click on create simplified convex sibling, and this will create a more perfect collision. But trust me, if you have more perfect collision for your bottle, so once you throw your bottle, it may start rolling on the ground and reaching to somewhere else and causing the other players to have a false damage effect. but if you have an object such as smoke or grenade, it's good to have it round or more complex, but for Molotov, box is fine. And let's save the scene. Okay, so it's time to add script to our scene. So select the bottle node, click on the script icon, and then click on create or load. Alright, so now let's add collision checking for our bottle. So to check the collision, let's select the bottle node and then make sure you change the max contacts report to be greater than 0. So I'll change it to 1 and contact monitoring to be on, so this will detect the collisions. So next, in the node, in the body entered, right click and then click on connect, and then make sure you select the root node and then click on connect. Alright, so let me paste this script. Okay, so this is the script, and initially we reference to our fire node, so we just reference to this node and store it in a variable fire. Alright, and then at this point function on body entered, which means that whenever our bottle detects any collision, so we just assign our flames properly on the ground. Okay, and then we set our max contacts reported to be 0 so that our bottle doesn't blast again and again, so it blasts only once. Alright, and then we set our freeze to be true, and then we hide our collision box, and then we set a variable can blast to be true, so this variable will help us to have an explosion effect. Okay, and then next we set all the particle emission to be true, so we just get the child using the get child function. So basically, so we reference to this variable, and if we want to set the emission for this one to be true, then we just say get child 0, and if we want the emission for this node to be true, then we say get child 1. If we want this one, so we just basically reference first to this by get child 1 and then this get child 0, which is over here. So basically we just make sure all the GPU particles emission are to be true, and then we hide our bottle mesh, and then we wait for 18 seconds. After waiting 18 seconds, so we just delete the Molotov, which means our Molotov has been expired. Alright, and in the process function here, so if our can blast is true, then we just increase our particle scale x and y value with our blast size. So basically this code, what it does is it gradually increases the size of these particles, so that initially when the bottle is hit on the ground, the particle size will be small, and then gradually it increases its size so that the explosion looks a bit real. Okay, so the particle x values are basically these values. So if you select the node in the inspector, if you go down and in the shader parameters, you can see here we have this particle scale x and particle scale y. So basically we are increasing our particle scales. So let me show you. So basically we increase the scale as this so that there is a realistic fire explosion. Okay, next let us make damage effect. So I'll be creating a very basic damage effect. So for that, let's add a area 3D, and then let's add a collision shape 3D, and then let's assign a shape to it. So this is the area in which if enemy enters, he will be getting the damage. Okay, so this may depend according to your scene, so I just made a rough guess. Okay, and then let's assign the signal. So if body entered, then connect to our root node and then click on connect. So this is the code for enemy damage. So if any body enters near our Molotov and if it's in a group of enemy, then we just decrease the health of the body by 30%. So this is a one-shot decrease. Alright, so let's now create a enemy. So let's create a rigid body, assign a mesh, let it be a new capsule mesh, and then let's assign color. Let's assign a collision mesh. Okay, so this is our enemy, and then let's save it. So in the scene, let's rename our scene to be enemy, and then let's add a script. So this is the script. At the beginning we create a variable called health and we set it to 0. So this is our enemy health, and in the process function, if our health of enemy goes below 0, then we just delete the enemy. So this is very basic for our enemy, just to demonstrate our Molotov. Alright, so let's add enemy in our group called enemy. Okay, So make sure you spell this name same as this one. Alright, so make sure you both the name matches, otherwise enemy will not get any damage. Okay, let's save the scene. Okay, it's time to create our scene. So I'll be creating a very basic scene. So for the grid texture, again I'll be using this texture which is in my GitHub repo. So I'll copy it in our Godot project. Okay, so make sure you save a scene, and then let's jump back to my GitHub repo. Now let's copy the play script. So let's copy the play folder and then paste it in our project. Let's jump back to Godot and let's add our player. Now let's make it editable children, and under camera let's add in node 3D. So this will be the point at which we throw our Molotov, and as a child of camera let's add our bottle too, and let's drag and drop somewhere over here. Select the camera, click on preview and change the bottle position around here. Copy the same position for our point also. Okay, now let's even drag our point a bit front of our Molotov. Alright, and let's open up our player script. Okay, so this is the basic player movement, and it has few keywords such as move, back, front, left and right. So let's quickly assign all these keys. So to project settings, under input map let's add move left, and then assign a keyword, close, then let's add move right and assign a key, D, close, next move forward and move backward, and we also have jump for spacebar, and the last one is the exit, and let it be Q. Okay, so the Q for exit, and let's add one more, and which will be throw. So this is for throwing our Molotov, and let us assign T. Alright, next in the script. Okay, so let's add this onReady war preload variable. Okay, so this is just we load our bottle scene. So if you don't know where your bottle exactly is, so you can just say bottle, and in the suggestion select your bottle.scene, and in the process function if we press our throw button, alright, so we just create a copy of our bottle and set it as top level, which means that once we throw our bottle we don't have the access to control the bottle location, and we add our bottle as a child of the point. So this point again is the point node which we created over here, this one. Next we add the throw force, so you can just change as your liking. So I'll be using the throw force as 200, and then we just orient our bottle properly and then we just throw it. So next let's open up our bottle. So if you select your bottle and make sure the freeze is on, this is because we don't want the dummy bottle to be thrown or to be reacted to the word, so that's why we just make this dummy bottle to be freeze. Okay, next if you open a bottle, and let's add collisions for our fire. Currently we don't have collisions added to our fire, flames and other particles. So if you select your fire, scroll down in the process material, collisions, change the mode to be rigid and change the friction to be 1. Let's do the same thing for our spark. And even for the fireball, and we will not do the same thing for our blast. Okay, then make sure you select your bottle and change the collision layer from 1 to 2. This is because we don't want our player to be interacting with the collisions, so that whenever our player collides, we don't want our bottle to be moved somewhere else and have false damage for our enemy. And in the script, let's add one more line, so the area monitoring to be true. So what this does is it will just damage our player only once and it doesn't damage again and again. And the max contacts reported was for the blast effect to take place. Alright, so these both are different, don't get confused. And again, in the world scene, let's add a environment node, a new world environment, and change the environment to be new environment, background mode to be sky, and sky to be a new sky, and material to be a new procedural material. Alright, and let's add a directional light 3D, drag it up and let's rotate it downward and change the energy to be 4 so that it's darker. Alright, now we have added fire flames and we have added fire collisions, but we want our fire to collide on ground, and currently GPU particles doesn't collide on ground. So to make our GPU particles to be colliding, we have to add our GPU collider. So we have two different colliders. The first one is the height field and the second one is the SDF3D. So if you have an open world terrain where you don't have any holes or any caves, then you can use this height field. But if you have houses and if you have any objects which are hollow, then you need to add the SDF3D. So I'll be showing you both the demos. Alright, so once you add, just scale it up. So this is how much you want your particles to be affected. So for the demo, let me show you the collisions inside this box. So I have two meshes, the sliding and the ring. Alright, so let's run this in. And now if you throw, you can see how it's affecting. The collisions are not proper, and on the ground the collisions are fine. And you notice that our fire is very low compared to ground. Okay, and even on the slope it's working very fine. So we need to change two things. So open up your bottle and in the fire, in the drawer pass, change the Y value to be 0.9 so that our flame is above the ground level. And one more thing, if you select your blast, then make sure this animation looping is off. Previously I told you to be on, but make sure it's off, otherwise you will get a glitch of double blast such as this one. So you can see we have two blasts. So to avoid that, you can just make sure your animation looping is off, and if you run, now you can see it only run once. So let's rename the collision to be outer, save the scene, and this time let's try with the SDF3D. So let me rename it to be inner so that it's inside your house and the outer is for your outer. Alright, and if you add both of them, then only outer is gonna work, inner is not gonna work. So let's even place our meshes inside this box. So let me scale the box up. Okay, and there are difference for both of them. So the outer works very fine, you no need to bake your scene, but for inner you need to bake your scene. So when you select your inner, you'll see an option called bake SDF. So click on that and create a new folder where you want to bake your data. So in my case, I'll be creating a folder called bake map, and inside this I'll be saving it and click on bake SDF. Alright, let's run our scene. Let's throw it here. Okay, you see an issue, the particles are not moving. Okay, so the particles are at a single point and it's not spread across the object. And one more thing is that you'll see the particle size is huge, so let's scale it down. So in the geometry, let's scale the particle X and Y to be 1 so that our flames are smaller. And again, I have the outer one on, and that's why I said if you have both of them, then outer is gonna first work and not the inner. So let us turn off the outer and select the inner and then bake it. And now you can see it's working fine. And if you want the particles to be less, then you can just adjust it over here. So previously it was set to 150, then I just changed it to 120. Okay, and it's time to add enemy. So this is the enemy and let's run it, and let's throw the bottle, and you can see the enemy is gone because this bottle is also affecting our enemy. So as soon as we enter the enemy, the area detects that it's enemy and it tries to kill, even though we have freezed the bottle, even though we have set the freeze to be on, but you know, this freeze only works for the rigid body and not the area. So in the bottle, select the area and turn off this monitoring so that it don't detect the enemies. And in the script we have changed here the monitoring to be true, so as soon as our bottle blasts, the monitoring will be true and the enemy will be getting damage. Okay, so let's run our scene now and throw 3 bottles, so which will have a damage of 90 on our enemy. And if you know, our enemy health was 100. Alright, so let's wait for a few time so that the flames are gone. Okay, so let's throw the last bottle and boom, the enemy is gone. And again I say, if you have an open world, then you can just ignore this inner one and you need to create a height map. But if you have the houses, then you need to create this inner and you need to bake it. It may depend on how much you have your scene. So if you have a large scene, then you need to change the resolution, but again, changing the resolution may take more time to bake, so you need to change accordingly. So before actually completing the tutorial, the last thing is add flames on this row. So let's add a GPU particles as the child of our mesh, and in the process material, let's assign a new particle process material, and gravity y direction to be 0, and the animation to be 5 to 7. And in the drawer pass, let's assign a new plane mesh and orientation to be facing Z. And in the geometry, let's assign a new shader material, and in the shader, let's load again the same shader which was for our flames. In the shader parameters, change the albedo color to be white, H frame particles are 16, V frame are 5, animation looping to be on, and for texture albedo, we'll be using again the same flame texture. And you can see the scale is very high and also the animation is very high, so let's change the lifetime to be 10 seconds and amount to be 2. Make sure explosiveness is set to 1, fixed FPS to be 60. And under drawing, let's enable local parts so we can see where our fire exactly is. Okay, and let's scale down our flames. Okay, so this is fine, I guess. And let's change the amount 1. Okay, it's fine. Save the scene. So that's it for the tutorial. Thank you guys for watching my tutorial. If you have any questions, comment it down. Do like the tutorial, do comment, do subscribe, and always have a great day.